Have you ever heard the incredible story of an entire army, complete with war elephants being defeated by a flock of tiny birds? It sounds like something out of a fantasy movie, but this is a true event, mentioned in the Quran itself. This is the story of the companions of the elephant, a tale of faith, arrogance, and a miracle that protected the most sacred house on earth. Let's travel back in time to the year 570 AD. This year is so significant in Islamic history that it's known as the Year of the Elephant, the very same year the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was born. In Yemen, a powerful and arrogant ruler named Abraha had built a grand, magnificent cathedral. He decorated it with gold, silver, and the finest materials, hoping to make it the center of pilgrimage for all of Arabia. He wanted people to turn away from the Kaaba in Mecca and come to his new center of worship instead. But the Arabs, for generations, had revered the Kaaba, built by the prophets Ibrahim and Ismail. Their hearts were tied to that simple, cubic structure in the desert valley of Mecca. They continued their pilgrimage to Mecca, ignoring Abraha's lavish cathedral. This infuriated Abraha. His pride was wounded, and his grand plan was failing. Consumed by jealousy and rage, he made a vow. He would march to Mecca and demolish the Kaaba, stone by stone. Abraha assembled a massive, fearsome army, the likes of which Arabia had never seen. And at the head of this army was a colossal secret weapon, a giant war elephant named Mahmud. Elephants were not native to Arabia, so the sight of these huge beasts struck fear into the hearts of everyone who saw them. As Abraha's army marched north, tribe after tribe either surrendered or were swiftly defeated. Nothing could stand in their way. As they neared Mecca, the army captured livestock belonging to the Quraysh, the leading tribe of Mecca. Among these animals were 200 camels belonging to Abdul Muttalib, the grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad and the chief of the Quraysh. Abdul Muttalib was a man of great dignity and wisdom. He went to Abraha's camp, not to beg for the safety of the Kaaba, but to negotiate. Abraha, seeing the noble presence of Abdul Muttalib, was impressed. He asked him what he wanted. He expected the chief of Mecca to plead for the city and the Kaaba, but Abdul Muttalib's reply surprised him. He said, "I have come to ask you to return my 200 camels that your soldiers have taken." Abraha was shocked and disappointed. He said, "I came to destroy your house of honor, the foundation of your father's faith, and you only ask for your camels. I thought you were a great man, but you have fallen in my eyes." Abdul Muttalib's response was filled with unshakable faith. He calmly replied, "I am the owner of the camels, so I have come for them. As for the house, it has its own Lord, who will protect it." This powerful statement showed that his trust was not in armies or negotiations, but in God alone. Abraha, scoffing, returned the camels and declared that nothing would stop him from destroying the Kaaba. Abdul Muttalib returned to Mecca and told his people to evacuate the city and take refuge in the surrounding mountains. He then went to the Kaaba, held on to its curtains, and made a heartfelt prayer. He prayed to God, the Lord of the house, to protect it from the aggression of Abraha and his army. Then, he too went to the mountains with his people, leaving the city of Mecca empty, awaiting its fate. The next morning, Abraha ordered his army to advance. They prepared the giant elephant, Mahmud, to lead the charge and smash the Kaaba. But as they tried to direct the elephant towards Mecca, it stopped. It knelt down and refused to move a single step forward. They tried everything. They coaxed it. They beat it. They pushed it, but the elephant would not move towards the Kaaba. When they turned it in any other direction, away from Mecca, it would get up and walk. But as soon as they faced it towards the Kaaba, it would kneel again. While they were struggling with the elephant, something extraordinary happened. The sky above them began to darken. A shadow fell over the valley, not from clouds, but from countless birds. As the army looked up, they saw swarms of small, swift birds, like swallows, flying in from the sea. The Quran describes them as Ababeel, meaning flocks or groups. This was no ordinary migration. Each tiny bird carried 3 small stones, one in its beak and one in each of its claws. These were no ordinary stones. They were described as being like baked clay. Sigil. As the birds flew over Abraha's army, they began to drop the pebbles. Imagine the scene. A mighty army, with armored soldiers and giant elephants, completely helpless against a shower of tiny stones from the sky. Each stone, when it hit a soldier, was devastating. It would strike with such force and heat that it would pierce through their armor and bodies. Panic erupted. Soldiers and elephants fell where they stood. The army was thrown into chaos and disarray, trying to flee but finding no escape. The Quran beautifully and concisely describes this event in a short chapter named Surah Al-Fil, the elephant. It says, "Have you not seen how your Lord dealt with the companions of the elephant? Did he not make their plan go astray? And he sent against them birds and flocks, striking them with stones of baked clay, and he made them like eaten straw. Abraha himself was struck and became gravely ill. His soldiers tried to carry him back to Yemen, but his body disintegrated piece by piece along the way. By the time he reached his homeland, he was a horrific sight, a mere shadow of his former arrogant self. And he died a painful, humiliating death. Not a single soldier from his army made it back unharmed. They were utterly annihilated. The valley was left looking like a field of crops that had been chewed up and spat out, just as the Quran describes. The Kaaba stood untouched, safe and secure. The people of Quraysh returned from the mountains to find their city, saved by a divine miracle. This event elevated the status of the Quraysh tribe throughout Arabia. Everyone recognized that God had specially protected his house and the people who served it. The story of the companions of the elephant is a powerful reminder. It teaches us that no matter how powerful or arrogant a person or an army may seem, their power is nothing compared to the power of God. It shows that God protects what is sacred, and that true faith and trust in him can overcome any worldly threat. When Abdul Muttalib said, "The house has its own Lord, who will protect it," he wasn't being passive. He was demonstrating the highest level of faith. He did what he could. He warned his people and sought the return of his property, but for the ultimate protection of the Kaaba. He put his complete trust in God. This story, happening in the year of the Prophet's birth, was like a divine preface to the great events that were to follow. It was a sign that this land and this house were under divine protection, setting the stage for the final message to humanity that would soon emerge from this very city. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by a challenge that seems as big as an army of elephants, remember this story. Remember the tiny birds, the Ababeel, and the unshakable faith of Abdul Muttalib. It's a timeless lesson that with faith, even the smallest can overcome the greatest, because victory and protection ultimately come from God alone. Thank you for watching.